Hi there. This is Andrea Mowry of Andrea Renee Knits, and this is I'll Knit If I Want To. And I'm gonna be real honest with y'all. I just recorded an entire video, and I didn't hit record. If you've been with me for a while, you'll know that like in many an episode halfway through, I'm like, and I look to make sure it's recording because I have this paranoia about not hitting that record button because I've done it. There's nothing worse. I mean, I'll get over this. It stings a little, but I'll get over it. But there's nothing worse than like, I have small kids and there are times when they've done the funniest thing ever and I'm like, yeah, I got it on video. And then I look, no, you go to hit stop and it starts recording and you're like, I never hit the button. So, we're just going to take this as an opportunity to already, I don't know what I'm saying. We're going to take this as an opportunity to give you even better answers than I would have the first time I tried. Okay, well, the good news is I am wearing my I'm doubling up today. I am double sweatered and overalled, so it's going to be a good day. Even though I didn't hit record the first time, it's going to be a good day. I am wearing my DRK everyday sweater with my newest pattern. This is Cardigan. It is like a cardi jacket. It is something that has been missing from my wardrobe for years, that I would look and be like, what I want is, especially in the fall, I want that sweater that can go on over other sweaters, that like basically I can throw on top of anything. And so this is what I wanted. This is my dream I've been waiting for my little knit kind of jacket deal. So it's just worn open. It's oversized. It has just wide, oversized sleeves, and you can just throw it on top. It fits over hoodies. It fits over other sweaters. It's just cute all on its own. It would look fantastic with like a jumpsuit. So anyways, this is Cardigan. It is made out of Spin Cycle Yarn's newest yarn base that they just released, which is called Trine. And it is a 3-ply worsted weight yarn where typically, if you're familiar with Spin Cycle Yarns, they change colors throughout the skein. This is just single solid colors that they dye and spin up and then ply together. So every single colorway has 3 different colors spun together. So this one has like this blue and then a pale turquoise and a gray. It's really beautiful. And I used Dream State with it to still take advantage of their color changing sorcery that is so beautiful. So I will, of course, link to that below. I'm going to be looking at that time thing throughout this whole episode, being like, is it recording? Okay, let's try this again. Okay. Hi, Andrea. I've been really inspired by your combination spins. I've never mixed braids or blends before, but I've just ordered a bunch of new fiber so I can play with combo spins. That being said, I'm a little nervous. Anything you recommend avoiding in terms of color combinations? Should I avoid contrasting colors? Although I can't really control where the colors will match up during plying. Do you just throw caution to the wind and hope for the best? So I think there's a little bit of a learning curve. Here's how I pick colors for my combo spins. And I actually have some yarn right here. This is not one of them. This is all one colorway. I'm just getting it out of the way. These were all hanging on my mannequin because I have yet to like label them. And sometimes I just like to be surrounded by my hand spun. Here is a combo. And here is a combo. Whoop! And here is a combo. I've got lots of combo spins right here. Okay, so here's a combo. And what I would do is I would look for braids that have similar colors within them. And then I do like there to be something interesting though. But all these had some purples in them. I think they all had a little bit of the orangey yellow color that was in them. I can't remember their fiber content off the top of my head. I shared this in a previous episode though. But so what I like to do is just like I do when I'm trying to fade colors, I will lay out my skeins and make what I call yarn spaghetti. So I basically take the skein and I kind of lay it like this on the floor, all kind of zhuzhed up. And then I'll put the skeins I'm trying to blend with next to it. And I'll kind of make like an undulating river. And as I look, maybe kind of squint my eyes a little, as I look over them, I want it to pull my eye across all the colors. I don't want to be jarred by a point of contrast in them. So that's kind of like to give you an idea of what I'm thinking about as I do that. So I treat my combo spins the same way, where I want it to blend through the different braids that I'm going to use together. And that's how I know that they're going to be pretty cohesive, because the thing that I would say you need to be careful with combo spins is, like you had mentioned, contrast colors. So for me, two of my absolute favorite color combos is orange and blue. I love orange and blues together so much. Not necessarily primary blue with secondary orange, kid-like colors combined, more like tilting a little bit off that axis. So maybe like a turquoise with like a poppy orange, or like a mint and orange. So this even has, you can see a little bit of that happening. So I do love that. And I do tend to want to combine that color a lot, but I think with spinning, you have to be a little bit careful, because if you have too many contrasty bits, it can turn brown. Anytime you mix colors from opposite sides of the color wheel, if you were playing with paint, you would end up with brown. Purple and yellow, orange and blue, red and green, you mix those together, you're gonna get brown. So think about it that way. Think about it kind of like mixing paints, and if they're gonna enhance each other, or if they might create that muddy look. Here is where I think it went really well with the orange and blue together. There are some parts that are definitely high contrast barber pulling going on, but I think that they're mellowed out with where the yarn, the two plies overlapped in a really pleasing way to the eye, that I think that it's going to be just fine once it's knit up. But I think that if you're worried about that, sticking closer, doing like a soft gradient where all those colors are closer to each other on the color wheel is a really safe way to go. So here's another combo ply. This was with a bat from Artifacts of Appreciation. And then I think I just did 2 braids I had as my other plies. So the bat was predominantly gray with some flecks of purples in it. So that's what took me to picking out purple heavy braids from my stash. And I think they both had some orange in it. So again, they had some colors that I was seeing happen in both braids that I knew would play nicely all together. So that's another combo spin. And so again, I think it can be nice to have a grounding neutral, like that gray dominant bat that I used, can be a nice way to kind of neutralize the colors that are happening in there as well. I think I might use that for a color work sweater, like almost like Illuminate, where it has the stripes going throughout. I saw a hand spun Illuminate on Instagram. Oh my gosh, it was so beautiful, so beautiful. So I wish I knew that Instagram handle off the top of my head, because I would love for y'all to see it. I think I've shared it in my stories before, but it's really, really gorgeous. If you're on Instagram, try and hunt down a hand spun Illuminate, because it was so beautiful. But there you go. So my weekender, spin it to knit it weekender, my version for the knit along. I am also doing a combo spin. I finally settled on my yarn. I showed this last week, but I'm just going to show it again. So here is my swatch for that. This is also a combo spin. And if you go back, I think like 3 episodes, I showed all the braids that I was going to be using together. And this will be the right side of the fabric, which really blends it. It's really soft and delightful. And I will also say though, every time I do a combo spin, I have a moment of doubt every time as I'm plying. I'm like, what was I thinking? This is going to be so ugly. I do it every time. And then I wash it and I'm like, oh, it's my most favorite yarn I've ever made. So, kind of trust the process. And you might have some stinkers. You know, that's where sampling would come in handy. That is actually what I did, is I got nervous. And so I was like, I am going to apply like a fifth of the fiber I had into a skein and knit it up to make sure I liked it. And I mean, look how beautiful that cake is. It's gorgeous. I love it. But while I was plying, I was like, oh, I don't think I like this. So you just never know. You got to kind of follow it through to the end to know. So there you go. There's my tips on combo plying. And that one, for instance, is merino, rambouillet, and I think it's just called like American wool. It has some hardier breeds in it. It's quite crispy, crunchy when you're spinning it. Kind of feels like Corriedale to me. But when they're all played together, I couldn't get over how soft that yarn is. It's pretty shockingly soft. So I do not fear mixing different breeds together, but maybe someone would want to fight me on that. I don't know. So there you go. All right, next question. I'm still paranoid. Okay, we're going good. This is a decreasing question brought about by some major yarn chicken. I have some beautiful red tonal yarn that I've been saving for just the right pattern, and along came Sprite. Yay! I knew darn well that I didn't have enough to make the pattern as written, and that it would not only be cropped, but the sleeves would be shortened as well. I'm fine with that. Yarn chicken is fun, and I usually can't help but mess with patterns anyway. My question is about decreasing to make a more fitted waist. I tried decreasing on each side below the underarms when I was 2 inches from my waist by doing knit two together, knit one, slip, slip, knit on every row. Now that I'm starting my ribbing, I think the sides where I did those decreases might be really puffy or puckered. Should I rip back and decrease evenly around the rows, or maybe there's a way I'm not thinking of? So I'm gonna start this with the caveat that I do not do waist shaping. I've never liked how it looks on my body. I did waist shaping a few times, and I began realizing that sweaters that had waist shaping were the ones I did not like on me. I think I'm pretty straight-waisted, so it just looks lumpy instead of like fitting with the curves of my body. So I am no waist shaping pro. I'm just throwing that out there. But I think that if it's looking a bit puckery, my first thought is don't judge it till you blocked it. Have you blocked it? You can even just try steam blocking it, but it's not going to look exactly how it does pre-blocking once you blocked it. A lot of times it's going to smooth out things. So that would be my first inclination, is try blocking it. The second one would be if you feel like maybe that's decreasing too fast for the yarn you're using, to, for whatever reason you feel like it's causing maybe some puckering, I would try decreasing at a slower rate. Spreading them out over more rows, even only doing a single decrease on each side of your waist instead of at the same time. You can also move the decreases. You can have waist shaping decreases hit center front and center back instead of at the side. But what I would actually do if it were me, and I do think that sometimes it can look really nice to tuck in the waist before the hem on a cropped sweater. It kind of helps avoid the back flare out, which I actually really like, a little back flare depending on the style. But if you want it to do that really cute little cropped where the ribbing kind of hugs in more, what you can actually do is decrease about 20% of your stitches all in one round right before you do that hem. If you look at any like Elizabeth Zimmerman sweater patterns, she almost always increases the stitches if she's going bottom up, or decreases if she's going top down. Sorry, most of those earlier patterns were bottom up is what I was just thinking about my head. And I think it's by about 20%. And so that's going to give you that nice little cinch in for that ribbing, especially because corrugated ribbing, which is what is used on Sprite, it doesn't have the same pull in that regular ribbing does because it's done in color work. So it's not going to really pull in or expand. It doesn't act like normal ribbing acts.
just kind of is what it is. So if you want that cute little tuck in, then you might want to just try that, doing that one big decrease around like a row or two before you do your ribbing, your hem. That's what I would try. Okay, I hope that helps. Good luck. Next question. I bought a beautiful Sorry. I just had, the moment, I feel a little embarrassed. I just had a moment when so if you've been watching this for any amount of time, I'm a sing talker. It just happens. My kids are really used to it. We have family songs that we have made up that we all sing as though they're like real songs that everybody knows. And I just had a moment of thinking, like, what if somebody thought I was serious? Like, really trying. I don't have a good singing voice. I know this. So I was just imagining somebody thinking, because like I have definitely watched things where people do think they have a really good singing voice, and so they're like singing all the time. And I just had this moment of paranoia of like, oh no, what if somebody thinks I'm like trying to sing? Because I learned real young. I know what my voice sounds like. Anyways, sorry, just personal moment. If I did things like editing, I would edit this out, but I don't. So you get to enjoy it with me. Okay, Andrea. I bought a beautiful single skein of a farm yarn, sport weight yarn at Rhinebeck. Alpaca Merino Sari Silk Blend. It's delightful. My question is, how can I incorporate what feels like precious skeins of yarn into my knitting? Do you have suggestions for certain designs or projects? Mixing fibers or weights can be intimidating. So I loved this because I actually had these same thoughts when I went to Iceland with my husband this summer. We went, I was supposed to teach there at the beginning of the pandemic, and that got canceled. And so we had these plane tickets that we had to use up. And so it was our 10-year wedding anniversary. And so we went this summer. It was so nice. And while I was there, I have plenty of yarn. I don't need yarn. Especially when knitting is your work, you get a lot of yarn pretty quickly. And I just, I want to get through the yarn I have. So I was just like, I don't think I can justify buying yarn on this trip. But then you're in Iceland. How do you not buy yarn when you're in Iceland? And I found this amazing, beautiful yarn. Let me just grab a skein. On my way back. Okay. So we were in this really cute little shop right after my birthday hike, because we also happened to be there over my birthday. And we went on this amazing hike that I don't know if my husband and I would say our strong suit is planning trips. So we were a little bit flying by the seat of our pants. And we went on a hike for my birthday. I was like, all I want to do is like drink coffee and knit in the morning and go on a hike. And so we go on this hike, and unbeknownst to us, it leads to a thermal river. So everyone else knew and had their bathing suits, and we're getting in the river. We went in our undies. I was like, I'm not missing out on this. And it was just so fantastic. It was something I will never forget. And at the base of that hike, there was a really cute, it had like a shop on one side, and the other side had all kinds of food vendors and everything. So we grabbed some lunch, and I saw this yarn. Gilhagi, I would say. Probably not pronouncing that correctly, but that is my attempt. And this is pure Icelandic virgin wool from the Arctic North in Iceland, spun at the family farm. And I was like, this is the yarn I want to get from Iceland, and it's so precious. And so I was just kind of thinking about like, okay, what could I do with this precious yarn? How can I justify buying the yarn when I have yarn I need to knit at home? And I just realized how special it would be to make some hats for my husband and I out of this Icelandic wool that would represent our trip there. So I think picking a project that maybe only uses the one special skein that reminds you of that time. So what made me think of this when I read your question is how you got that at Rhinebeck, and it's this special farm yarn. So I think doing a one skein project, like a hat that you'll get so much use out of, so you get to wear it all the time. And depending on where you live, I guess if you live in Florida, you might not wear a wool hat all the time. But depending on where you are, just knitting something that like you'll get to utilize and think about that really amazing weekend you had in upstate New York at a sheep and fiber show. That just kind of reminds you of that time. Another great use for it, I don't know what it looks like, but another great way I like to use precious skeins is in color work, especially because you can even stretch it across multiple projects then, or doing like a cowl. So I had knit up I had spun up this very pink hand spun yarn that just made me think of my daughter the whole time I was spinning it. And so I knit her an inclinations cowl out of that precious skein. So there's some ideas. If any of you have your go-to projects for precious skeins, feel free to drop them below. That's actually where Find Your Fade was kind of born from. I had these individual skeins that I think a lot of us do go if we have the opportunity to go to like a fiber festival. And we'll pick like that one precious skein. That's like our souvenir from the show. And then we only have one. So we didn't have this collection of like one-offs. And so that's where that shawl was a way to use up these individual skeins. So depending on, again, what it looks like, you might be able to pair it with some other yarns in your stash. Like if it's a nice contrasting color, if you happen to have a sweater's quantity of yarn, you could do like a color work yoke with that skein. Or again, I kind of default to like a Harlow hat that's what I'm probably going to use these for. So anyways, I hope that gives you some inspiration, and I hope that anyone else who has ideas, add them to the comments below, so we can all be inspired on what to make with those precious skeins. Because to me, there's nothing sadder than when I see it sitting on my shelf, and I have some right in front of me that I always look at and I'm like, what am I going to use you in? So I think it deserves to be used. So yeah, if anybody has any project ideas, share them below. Okay. I'll also say mixing fibers and weights. I think shawls are a great place to do that. Or again, color work. A color work, you can kind of fudge the weight of a yarn in color work. But I think shawls are a really fun way to do that because you can add texture, and definitely holding strands together. If you weave, that could also be a fun way to use a fun skein. Okay. Hi, Andrea. I'm completely new to garment knitting this year. I've been watching your podcast for a long time and have heard you say many times that knitters tend to tighten up when moving from knitting flat to in the round. I'm very used to knitting with plant fibers and have just begun to work on a raglan sweater in wool. I finished the back and forth knitting and joined in the round, and I cannot believe the difference in tension. I've never had any big problems with tension before. I even tried going up a needle size, and my tension is still so different. Is there a reason for this? Do you have any tips to make this transition smoother? So, yeah, basically to kind of explain why that's happening is when we knit flat, we knit across one side and then we purl across the other side. And purl stitches take up more yarn than knit stitches. So they're gonna create a looser stitch across that row than your knit stitch row would. So when you're doing that every other row, your all over tension is gonna be looser than if you were knitting in the round where you knit every single round. So you're never doing any of those looser purl rows. So that is why our tension changes. And then it can be exacerbated by the way we knit. So for a lot of people, what happens is something called rowing out. Rowing out is when you have an even bigger difference than average on the size of your purls compared to your knits. So when you try to knit a stockinette stitch fabric flat, you'll see these divots in your fabric, like these channels. And so that's why we call it rowing out, because it looks like these rows of looser stitches that's in our fabric. So I don't know if you're rowing out or if your flat fabric still looks even in tension, but it's just at a much looser gauge than when you joint knit in the round. If it is that it's even tension, it's just a lot looser, changing needle sizes is going to be probably the best thing you can do. You might even need to go down a needle size for the flat instead of just up for in the round. Depends on which one's matching gauge, where you need it to be. And again, you can also try, if you have different needle materials available to you, you could try doing wooden needles for when you're knitting flat, which is going to help tighten up your flat gauge a little, and metal needles for when you're knitting in the round, which will help loosen that up a little. Now, if you're rowing out, there are a couple fixes to that. One is, if you work with a circular needle, even when you're knitting flat, you can have a smaller needle tip for the rows that you're going to purl across, and a larger needle tip for the rows that you're going to knit across. So you can put 2 different size tips on that one cord. So let's say you're knitting with a size 7, then you might want to go down to a size 6 for the rows you're going to purl on. The other thing you can try is combination knitting. So combination knitting helps us tighten up our purls, where you are going to wrap the yarn around your needle in the opposite direction that you usually do when you are purling. So we usually wrap the yarn over our needle when we work a purl stitch. You're going to actually wrap it under to make that purl stitch, and it uses quite a bit less yarn, so it's going to help that rowing out. The only trick you need to know about that is by wrapping the yarn under the needle instead of over the needle, it creates a twisted stitch. So when you go to work that same row on the other side, you're going to have to work through the back loop to untwist it. So I think that you kind of have to pay attention to, and you'll notice it. It's really easy to spot. So there are some tips. I hope that helps. And yeah, I guess that's all I got on that one. Last question. Hi, Andrea. Can you talk about your knitting journal? What type of book you use and what you write? Have you tried different brands or formats? Do you use files online? Do you use anything like Knit Companion? I usually print out my patterns and write all of the info about yarn yardage, needle size, gauge, etc., then scribble all over them as I'm going along. At the end, I tape on the yarn labels and some bits of the yarn and put them in clear sheet protectors in a binder. My binder is stuffed and messy, and a journal seems very appealing. To be honest, I love your binder idea. It just, to me, feels like a scrapbook of memories for your knitting. So I just think that sounds really lovely. I personally think that we should do whatever we're going to stick with. So for me, it does depend on what I am taking notes for. So I have a sewing journal, a spinning journal, and a knitting journal. I thought I had my spinning journal up here, but it must be downstairs. So let me grab my spinning journal real quick. What? It's not over here. Oh, it's hiding behind my little ironing things. Okay. So for knitting, mine's going to be a bit different because I'm designing. So it's really my design journal. And I do have a favorite notebook. I get these dot grid minis from Behance, and I have used them for years. They are pricey, and so I always, whenever they have a sale, I'll buy a handful of them. I really like this size because it fits. I used to use their bigger notebook, which is like a traditional notebook. I like that this fits into all my knitting bags. I love that it's spiral bound. That is key for me. I also keep a kitchen journal. So like the recipes that work out really well that maybe were online, recipes I make up myself, the ones that we just turn to again and again, I put into my kitchen notebook, along with, I do a lot of our meal plans in there too, because that way I can flip through when we are like, what do we even eat for dinner? I don't remember. I can go through old meal plans and be like, oh yeah, let's make this, and this week. So spiral bound's big for me. Although I will say my sewing journal is not spiral bound, but this is a gift. And it's, I mean, isn't it so cute? This is a gift for my sister for Mother's Day a couple years ago. So this just happened. I was starting a sewing journal and this happened to be available. But these are my favorite. As you may have guessed by the name, they are dot grid. I really prefer dot grid because I want to be able to, I feel like the space feels more free than if it was lined. So dot grid is my favorite. It's nice for if I want to draw out a knitting chart. Apparently it's nice if I want to practice some calligraphy. You know, there's lots of just doodles. I always start off with the intention of like, I'm only going to use this one pen in this notebook and it's going to be so beautiful. Here's Rhinebeck sweater sketching for 2020. And yeah, charts and stuff. Now I'm just getting distracted by my own journal. I totally lost what I was going to say. What was I talking about? I don't remember to-do lists. Yeah. So anyways, I end up, oh yes, I always say it was gonna be all neat and tidy, and without fail, it just ends up being messy little scribbly doodads. And it's so funny. I will sketch like ideas and I'm like, I forgot I even thought about doing that. Apparently this is an idea for a dickie that I would like to just return to that. So anyways, that is my knitting journal. My spinning journal I have shown on here. I wish I had it up here. I showed how I set it up and everything. So if you searched my YouTube channel for a spinning journal, I bet it would come up. But that one I almost do bullet journal style. I tend to do the same information on each. Knitting, generally I do the yarn and the needle size and my gauge. It's so easy to forget things. So anything I have any fear of forgetting, I pretty much to the top always starts of any entry starts with those three things: yarn, needle, gauge, and then maybe a quick little sketch and ideal measurements I'm trying to hit. And from there, it varies from project to project. For my spinning journal, I will do the wheel I'm using, the drafting method, the fiber content, the colorway, if the fiber was dyed, like where the fiber came from, what I'm hoping to achieve. Did I achieve it? I think that's a really great time to include a little bit of yarn. And then for my sewing journal, Andrea's Sewing Projects, I basically use Polaroids and I will write the name of the pattern, the size I made, if I made any adjustments to the pattern, and the size I made. When I trace the pattern, I include some of that information on there as well, but I have been amazed by how often I refer to this because I sew a lot of the same patterns again and again. I have made multiple pairs of berry pants. I have made multiple Nora tanks. And so I think that being able to refer back to here is so helpful. It looks like I am missing a couple pictures. So that is my little sewing journal. So there you go. That is how I journal my crafts, but I really think it's just whatever you'll stay consistent with, because again, I end up referencing those little crafting journals a lot. And my future self is always so grateful to my past self when I had the mind to write those notes down, because they end up being helpful for future projects. So there you go. Okay, I will also say, this is actually getting kind of long, but I will also say that I think another helpful thing to note down as far as knitting projects go is if I am knitting, let's say, a garment, and it's one I might want to knit again, I take pretty detailed notes of like, this is where I worked my sleeve decreases. This is where I did this, because then the second time I make it, it's just a breeze because I don't have to think about any of it. So those are really helpful notes to have. Okay. Oh, that was it. Okay. All right. Well, this was a silly one today, but I appreciate y'all as always for being here. This really makes me want to cast this on. Maybe I need to do a little Christmas gift for my honey. But I hope that y'all have a great weekend. I hope you get to enjoy some fall weather if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. I hope you get to enjoy some making in whatever form it may take for you this weekend. And I hope to see you back here next week. Bye.